Hello and welcome to Vault Holocron. I'm Jonathan and today I have a fanfic for you on the topic of what if Order 66 failed. This video was actually suggested to us by a viewer of the channel, so I'd like to thank them for the idea. Anyway, let's get into the what if. This story actually starts in the middle of the Clone Wars, at Five's death. In this timeline, the Jedi decided to look into the inhibitor chips in each of the clone troopers' brains, to discover if there was any truth in Five's words, or if the removal of the chip had turned him delusional. This study then led to the discovery of the chip's ability to control the brain, and that the inhibitor chips could be removed without harming the clone. Due to these revelations, the Order worked towards secretly removing the chips from every clone in the Grand Army of the Republic, making sure that only a small number of Jedi knew of the operation, and prepared for the moment when Palpatine would attempt to activate them. This day came at the end of the war, after Windu's defeat by the hands of Sidious. After this battle, Palpatine sent Anakin to gather the clones so that he could take over the Jedi Temple, wiping out any Jedi inside. Palpatine had planned to use Order 66 on these clones to ensure loyalty. However, the months of preparation from the Jedi meant that this time the clones refused to aid Anakin in his assault on the temple. The clones then fired on Anakin, intending to kill. You'd think that their years working alongside the Jedi would have made them hesitant, but this was not the case. The clones may have accepted that they were disposable soldiers, but they weren't about to forgive the Sith attempting to control their minds, especially as the goal was so gruesome. Their constant blaster fire didn't work so well on Anakin though, who through the power of the Chosen One and the acceptance of his rage, deflected the shots and dived behind the cover of one of the building's support beams. This provided him some much needed time to think, allowing him to avoid the impulsive behaviour that could lead to his death. But the clones were still closing in. At this same moment, in Palpatine's office, Sidious was informing as many clones as possible of Order 66, with clones pretending to be committed to the cause. This then set into motion the Jedi's plan to defeat the Sith. The doors of Palpatine's office slammed shut as the Senate office building was sent into lockdown. Sidious knew his plan had failed. The Jedi he hated so much had foiled the plans of the Sith once again. Sidious burned with hatred. If the Sith were to rise to power, they would need to do it the hard way. Meanwhile, Anakin had formulated a plan to escape his attackers. He knew that his only chance of escape would be to abuse his overwhelming power in the Force over the clones. And so, with one clean stroke, he sliced the beam he was hiding behind, and then force pushed it into the clones. Anakin then pushed down another one of the beams through the Force, and the ceiling crumbled down, crushing the legion of clone troopers. Anakin's troubles were far from over though, as the damage he'd caused wouldn't go unnoticed. He rushed away from the wreckage, still planning to take the Jedi Temple, even if he was alone. When Anakin arrived to the Jedi Temple, he was greeted by the Jedi Temple guards and Sin Dralig, as the temple had been put on high alert due to the locking down of the Senate office building. Luckily for Anakin, the Jedi didn't know yet that he'd been conspiring with the very Sith who'd been locked down. So he managed to slip by, being a respected member of the Jedi Council. However, even though any attacks he'd make would have the benefit of being unexpected, Anakin was still in a very difficult position. If he was to defeat the Jedi, he'd need to formulate a careful plan to defeat the guards, a formidable defense force, which was specifically trained to stop attackers like Anakin. Sin Dralig would be the greatest challenge though, due to his years of experience as the chief of security and the small group of temple guards he was accompanied by. On top of that, Dralig was ready to fight, taking his role as chief of security extremely seriously, and so couldn't so easily be caught off guard. This made taking over the Jedi Temple a far greater challenge than in the original timeline, and meant that Anakin was going to need to fight very well. Back in Palpatine's office, the Sith Lord was planning his next move, his revenge. Years of preparation, years of surrounding himself with the very people he hated so much, years of waiting, all for it to come crashing down. He was burning with rage, his soul as hot as the lava lakes on Mustafar. He was going to end the Jedi, be it with the clones or without. Palpatine knew the Jedi would be on their way, but he didn't care. Palpatine decided to wait for their arrival. At this point in the Jedi Temple, Anakin was planning his attack on the Temple Guards when Sindralik received a transmission from Master Yoda. Anakin couldn't hear the transmission, but it appeared that the Council were aware of Palpatine being Darth Sidious. Sindralik then gathered a group of Temple Guards and headed out towards the Senate office building. Anakin knew he couldn't lose Palpatine. If he did, then he'd never be able to save Padme, and even if he could, he'd gone too far now. There was no turning back. Anakin then followed Dralik and the guards from a distance, planning to catch them off guard and stop them before they could get to his master. Speaking of Palpatine, he could now feel a presence in the Force. Yoda and the Jedi had arrived and were on their way towards his very position. Palpatine had prepared by grabbing his second lightsaber and patiently waited for the Jedi to bust down his door. He could hear their footsteps moving closer, eager to slice them to pieces. Crash! The door flew open. Sidious dashed towards his pursuers, hoping to take one of them by surprise, but his blade was met by Yoda's. Yoda then held him back as the rest of the Jedi stepped into the office. With Yoda was Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, Aayla Secura, and Stas Ali. Palpatine knew that he was in for trouble. Filled with hate, Sidious attempted to separate the Jedi through the use of Force Lightning, but this didn't do much against the impenetrable wall of Jedi, but Secura had now become vulnerable. Sidious leapt at the opportunity, slicing her in two. He could clearly still hold his own. Palpatine and the Jedi then entered fierce battle. Meanwhile, Anakin was now certain of where Dralik and the Temple Guards were headed, and was also certain that he needed to intervene. When he reached the Senate office building, Anakin was ready to challenge them. He dashed across to the 5 Temple Guards, slicing up 2 of them before they'd even had the chance to react. Sindralik ignited his lightsaber, turning around ready for combat, and the other 3 Temple Guards followed, ready to protect him. Even with 2 of the guards gone, this was going to be a tough fight. Anakin engaged Dralik, fighting defensively as to avoid the Temple Guards. Dralik and the guards were ruthless, putting constant pressure on Anakin. For all of the power the Sith claimed to have, fighting the Jedi was by far the hardest challenge Anakin had ever faced. However, even Dralik and the Temple Guards weren't unbeatable for Anakin, as he sliced into one of the guards. Anakin then force pushed the remaining guards away, engaging Dralik. Dralik's resolve was as strong as Beskar, yet Anakin, with the power of the Chosen One flowing through his veins, still had the upper hand. Anakin then saw his chance to strike and kill Dralik, but the Temple Guards were advancing again. A yellow blade then pierced through one of the guards' chest, buying Anakin the time he needed. With one swift strike, Anakin struck Dralik down. The final Temple Guard then bowed to Anakin, saying how impressed he was with Anakin's display. The guard then took their mask off, showing how they are leaving their commitment as a Jedi Temple Guard and revealing themselves to be a Padawan. However, Anakin didn't trust this guard, despite their betrayal to their Jedi friends. The rule of 2 stated that there can only be 2 Sith, so surely this Jedi wouldn't be needed. But he could prove useful in taking down the Jedi. The Padawan then revealed that there was a group of Jedi who'd already come through here to fight Palpatine, and that Anakin would need the help if he was to save Palpatine. Anakin didn't believe that he'd need the Temple Guard, but knew that the inside knowledge they possessed could prove useful. Anakin then headed towards Palpatine's office, but as he did, he felt a presence in the Force. A familiar presence. His old master stepped out before him. "We know what you have become," he said. Anakin could hear the signature Jedi arrogance in his voice. Another Jedi then stood alongside Kenobi. It was the Jedi Anakin had been mentoring since the start of the Clone Wars. It was his Padawan, and now she'd have to die. It was now the time for Anakin to cement himself into his new life by killing his old one. Anakin and Kenobi locked blades, and beside them Ahsoka and the Temple Guard entered into combat. Kenobi told Anakin of what Maul had said to Ahsoka, that Anakin had been moulded into a weapon, a tool in the Sith's 1,000-year revenge, a tool that would likely be tossed aside like Maul and Dooku before him. Anakin suffered before his old friends, feeling the weight of their hurt and disappointment. He used this suffering to dig further into the dark side. "Anakin, come to your senses!" Kenobi shouted. "The name's Vader now," Anakin responded as he bombarded Kenobi with lightsaber strikes. Kenobi blocked these swings with difficulty, relying on his unrivaled expertise in Sorsu lightsaber form. As they were battling, a loud cry came from beside them. The Padawan fell to the ground. Ahsoka rushed to help Kenobi, but he made a mysterious hand gesture to her, sending her away. Anakin couldn't decipher what Kenobi was saying, but he knew that he was up to something. Back in Palpatine's office, Sidious had now killed Stas Ali and Plo Koon, leaving him with only Ki-Adi-Mundi and Yoda to fight. Sidious was tiring, having maintained a battle with some of the Jedi's finest fighters for quite some time now. Fighting Yoda is a hard enough challenge, but fighting other Jedi alongside severely worsens this. Palpatine locked blades with both his opponents, pushing them back. The two Jedi could see Sidious's energy fading though, and took advantage of this, pushing him into a corner. Palpatine knew this was happening, and used the moment to strike. He sweeps Mundi's legs away, and plunged one of his crimson blades through the Sarean's chest. The scales were now balanced, and the Sith dream was truly back on track. Meanwhile, Anakin was still in combat with Kenobi. Anakin laid strike after strike down on Kenobi, but Kenobi was far more careful and methodical, preserving himself long enough to outsmart an arrogant Anakin. Ahsoka then emerged, telling Anakin that it was time to end his killing spree. Anakin may have cared for Ahsoka, but this wasn't enough to redeem him. He was committed to the quest into the dark side. Another figure then stepped out from behind Ahsoka though. Anakin withdrew his blade. His beloved wife approached him. Anakin excitedly told her he'd found a way to save her. This attitude weirdly reminded Padme of the young boy she had met on Tatooine, who was so optimistic about his future. However, Padme felt that even if Anakin was able to save her, that she couldn't follow him down this path of darkness. She told Anakin she'd rather die doing what's right than to live in the blood of the innocent. Anakin grabbed Padme by the neck with the Force and held her in the air. Anakin then turned to Ahsoka and Kenobi. He shouted, "You turned her against me!" Kenobi stepped in and told Anakin that Padme had made her choice. Anakin let go of Padme. Ahsoka tried to help Kenobi, appealing to the caring master she once knew. Ahsoka told Anakin that under his guidance, she had managed to become more than she ever could have imagined, and that she was now hoping to return the favour. She reminded him of their time working together, and of Mortis, where he helped save her life, not through the dark, but through the light. Anakin still showed no signs of mercy. Anakin ignited his blade. At this point, Palpatine was still fighting off Yoda, his biggest threat in the way of his new empire. He could feel himself getting weaker with every lightsaber clash. Palpatine wasn't going to let this stop him though. He knew that if Yoda had experienced even one moment of weakness, he'd be able to kill the little green Jedi. All he needed was the right moment. A large grin then stretched across Palpatine's scarred and wrinkled face. Yoda noticed this, concerned for what was coming next. Anakin then marched through the door into Palpatine's office, lightsaber ignited and mind set on his goal. He had the power to end the conflict. Anakin lifted his lightsaber and slashed into his new enemy. The room was filled with silence. Anakin looked down, saying,
"What have I done?"
He then dropped his lightsaber and stared at Yoda with regret. Yoda turned and thanked Anakin for the assistance, and then left to get some much-needed rest, dismissing Anakin for the moment. Anakin then rushed to check on Padme, who he had left in the care of Kenobi and Ahsoka. A week later, Anakin was put on trial under the Jedi Council, who expelled him from the Order. He didn't fall to the dark side again though, as with his turn back to the light, Padme didn't die of sadness. Anakin did have to spend time in prison though, but he spent his time there satisfied, knowing his family was safe. Luke and Leia were later taken in by the Jedi Order when they were old enough, and became powerful Jedi like their father. Anyway, that's it for this fanfiction. I hope you enjoyed my version of events if Order 66 had failed. Feel free to share your ideas in the comments, and we hope to see you later at Vault Holocron.